Hi guys, it's Jessica, and I'm trying out filming location number 3 or 4 right now. I know backlighting isn't ideal, but I think this is actually less echo than filming in one of the smaller rooms, so I thought I would give it a try and see how it goes. It's a new year, and I am refreshing what I'm reading. I've been listening to a lot of science fiction classics right now, but I was looking to see what Kindle Unlimited stories would appeal to me this year. I have a TBR I did for Kindle Unlimited from August that you can see here. However, since then, all of those tabs have disappeared. I've either read the books or cleared them out of my memory, and I'm just in the mood to try something new. I'm going to see what the most popular fantasy Kindle Unlimited stories that feature werewolves and shifters are. And what I did to get to this area on Amazon is I picked Kindle books, I picked the fantasy science fiction genre, I picked the fantasy genre, I selected the werewolves and shifters characters, and I selected Kindle Unlimited. I thought we would just go through them together and see whether or not they appeal to me or whether or not I'd read them and move on from there. At the top of the list is going to be the Zodiac Academy series. Currently, number 7, Heartless Sky, is at the top of the list. These Zodiac Academy stories are by Peckhan and Susan Valenti, which is kind of interesting because I read a supernatural prison werewolf shifter story by them last year. I liked 1 and 2. I found that it was a story centered on a prison break where everyone stayed in prison too long. I know on Kindle Unlimited, the game is to make longer stories and to drag things out. The authors get paid by the page, but I just felt like they had sort of abused that. Still, I liked the characters well enough that I'm looking forward to book 4. I haven't personally had any interest in this Zodiac Academy series because it's a school-based series. If we look at the top ones though, it's 7, 4, 5, 2, 6, 3, and finally 1. I'm going to open up on 1 just so we can look at the summary together. So it has sort of like an interesting premise. We're talking about Gemini the Zodiac being impulsive, curious, and headstrong, and also a twin, heir to the throne that they know nothing about, and it turns out they're also fae. So we're getting like a teenager, and they're learning something new about themselves, so that's going to help them take us into this new world, and we're going to go do magical school thing. I know that Peckhan and Susan Valenti do really good werewolf shifter lore and stories, and I know that they usually like combine this all together with different fae and other magical beings and systems, so I can see why they would make this supernatural story. It wouldn't even surprise me to find out that this is the same universe as their supernatural prison. So these first couple stories are not for me, but I do see why they're at the top of the list, and I'm curious to see what else is going there. Next is going to be Dark Horse Nate Temple series book 16 by Shayne Silver. I've never heard of this series. I like the cover. It's got a shadowy figure with some kind of lightning-ish power on what looks like a dark unicorn. Obviously, I'm not going to jump in on book 16. So reading the summary, I'm getting like some Dresden File vibes. It seems like we've got a gritty male character. Magic is secret from like the larger world, and they're kind of solving crimes or investigating things in the magic side. How the werewolf comes in here isn't immediately apparent. I could see like shifters and werewolves being part of this series, but it's not in the main summary. And jumping down to the product details to see what categories the author self-selected into, I'm seeing horror comedy, superhero fantasy ebooks, and psychic suspense. I could see the superhero fantasy based off of the summary. Because they're trying to be dark and edgy, I can see how that would cross over into darker themes and perhaps be disturbing or scary for some readers. Psychic suspense is a category I see a lot here in these product details, and I have no idea what categorizes something as psychic suspense. So I'm going to say the Nate Temple book series, Obsidian Sun, is not for me right now. It's interesting it's showing up on werewolves and shifters, but I'm not seeing a strong feature there, and I'm also not getting like an interesting, compelling, strong female lead vibe, or even like an interesting world that stands out from all these other kind of like gritty urban fantasy worlds. The biggest thing it has going for, as far as I'm concerned, is that there is a dark, foul-mouthed unicorn ride going on. Next is going to be Den of Monsters, Masquerade of Sin, a monster romance standalone, and it's by Avery Song. So this kind of interests me because Avery Song did the Wolf Awaken series, which I've done a workshop on here. And while the Wolf Awaken series got a little too wild and detailed and out there for me, there's something about it that was pulpy and dark and enjoyable that I just kind of wanted to roll with. I loved how she did like some female friendships. I loved how badass her characters were. I liked the kind of support system there were. And I liked some of the ways that they tried to show different forms of trauma, abuse, and recovery. It also kind of makes sense to me that Avery Song would capitalize on this current like monster romance sort of hot topic trend going on. Right away, looking at these page details, this is a 552-page book, so I'm kind of concerned historically it's been too much for me. But I am loving this cover. I've got like a female central character and it looks like she's got quite a few guys who are obsessed with her. So looking at this summary, it appears to be about a girl whose family has gotten to some kind of magical debt. The way that she's repaying it is by going to this dance. The longer she spends dancing with different people on the dance floor, the more of her debt goes down. But right away, like no werewolf shifter stuff is jumping out. In fact, the people she dances with are demons. All of this is particularly interesting to me because I know Avery Song has a popular werewolf story. So why is this one in with the werewolves and not her popular werewolf series, where I think book 4 actually launched recently? I kind of am into this potentially. I like the whole idea that she danced with 5 different guys. When each guy danced with her, they were laying claim to her and she didn't know it. She just thought she was reducing her debt. I'm also not sure why it's called Den of Monsters when these are demons specifically. I think as far as monster romances go, it's probably going to be on the tamer side, because demons are usually very humanoid and not very monstery, but who knows? It's sitting at 4.5 stars from reviewers and it has 633 ratings, and it's a #1 bestseller in psychic suspense. So there's that psychic suspense again that I just still have no idea. It's also #1 in occult magic right now and #1 in new age goddesses. That's a category I'd like to explore sometime. Drop a comment down below if you want to explore the new age goddess category on the Kindle store with me. So I'm gonna hold on to the Den of Monsters, put that on my TBR. I'm not sure if it's for me or not based off my experience with Avery Song, and also like I'm not sure I'm really into a reverse harem, demons laying claim on an unknown woman kind of story, but I know how Avery Song usually writes her female characters and I think it could be really fun. So next is going to be Moon Touched on the Zodiac Wolves book 1 series by Elizabeth Briggs. Sounds like it might actually be a werewolf shifter story, and there's literally a wolf in the background. It's a romance. One of the reasons I found the list this way is because I wanted to find some werewolf shifter stories that didn't have a strong romance theme in them. So guys, I have read Elizabeth Briggs before. I read her book Demon King, and I actually did a series really early on in this booktube channel called Fanfic Maybe, where I talked about the similarities between Demon King and the TV show Lucifer. Briggs was a pretty competent writer. I didn't find anything about her prose grammatically wrong or uninteresting in that way, but I thought her storytelling was kind of mediocre at best. She relies on a lot of tropes. She doesn't explore things in depth, and she is really hoping that you'll just be swept up in a moment and not really think too critically about anything that's going on or different ways that you could have improved it. And looking at this story, Moon Touch, it's pretty clear to me that she's looking to capitalize on the whole rejected, fated mates kind of situation. Our main character being a half-human werewolf that's been treated really badly in her pack and is eventually kicked out, is incorporating some kind of horoscope thing, so I'm wondering if she's trying to chase a trend with the Zodiac school thing. Let me see, when did this come out? Yeah, she published this in September 2021, so that would have been when the Zodiac high school stories that we've talked about at the top of the list were really coming into their TikTok golden age. So I'm wondering if part of this like Zodiac thing is her chasing a trend, as well as like the true mates, and also like the poor underdog, beat up kind of girl finding a powerful fated mate. Will they, won't they reject her? Definitely not for me. It's the kind of thing I might do a reading vlog on if I had nothing else to read. And this premise is so uninspired. I'm not sure it would be worth anyone's time to try and elevate the story to something else. It really feels like it's just a clout chasing story. Although, to be fair, it is doing well in that area. It's #1 in New Age horoscopes, #2 in Greco-Roman myth and legends fantasy ebooks, and #3 in mythology. So she chose good categories for it. And none of these categories are werewolf and shifter related. I'm wondering if she's taking like that generic werewolf shifter story that if you're into that, you see all the time, and is putting it into these other cross categories that might be less familiar with the traditional fated mates rejected kind of trope. Next is going to be One Night Stand, Midnight Empire Tower, book #4 by Annabel Chase. I love this book #4 cover. We've got a lady in leather looking stern walking towards us. It looks like there's some rocks with like some sigils or runes floating in the background, so I'm getting like a magic-y, badass fighter chick kind of vibe. I'm gonna roll us back to book 1 though to see where the series starts, and then we can decide what we think about it. So there's a couple of things going on here that I really like. This is a vampire story versus a werewolf story. So vampires came in, they destroyed the world. This woman is working as a knight in what used to be London. She uses a battle axe as her primary weapon, which is kind of fun. Instead of like a sword, it's like a nice little difference. And instead of a horse, she sometimes rides a dragon, which sounds to me like fun too. Not just that riding a dragon is so much more epic than riding a horse, but also it implies that dragons are trainable. Maybe dragons have some kind of intelligence, in which case that would be fun to like get some dragon dialogue going on. It is kind of unfortunately a enemies to lovers romance. I know a lot of people are really into that, but like I wanted to get to know this character a little bit more, see her like out in the trail doing awesome things, maybe gaining that reputation where the vampires now want to hunt her down. But instead we meet her at a point where she's already got that reputation, and she runs into like this prince vampire that she sort of falls in love with, and he falls in love with her. It is saying that it's going to be humorous, has a lot of heart, and has a kick-butt female protagonist. So those are all things I like, but I'm just not really into like an enemies to lovers story. I'm really trying to branch out of something that's romance centered. I don't mind if there's romance in the story, like relationships happen, but when the whole thing is
I am awesome and I fight vampires, and now this one vampire knows who I am and we're sort of like developing a relationship.
That's too relationship centered for me right now. I see why it's at the top of the list. I think that there's a lot of romance, happily ever after escapism going on right now, and because of that, the romance genre in general is seeing a boom, but it's not for me right now. Next is going to be Freaky Sights, A Mystic Caravan Mystery Book 13 by Amanda M. Lee. I gotta tell you, based off of the cover, I'm already super disinterested. We have what looks like a kind of junky CGI woman in the forefront with like a ghostly pale white face, and she's wearing what looks like old-timey Renaissance medieval style clothing. Don't quote me on the time period. I'm not good at judging that. It could be Victorian era for all I know, but I don't want something back in time. We're gonna look at it. Ugh. Okay, so I'm looking at book #1, which is apparently Freak Days, A Mystic Caravan mystery book. And again, the character looks like a terribly CGI'd human in wannabe Harley Quinn makeup. And I like Harley Quinn as a character, so I'm not necessarily opposed to like following a crime clown around, but it's definitely not what I was looking for in werewolf shifter stories. I don't hate the summary. It looks like we're gonna feature on a traveling circus where the show has to go on even if there are monsters afoot. Poet Parker is Romani at birth and a fortune teller by choice, so I like that kind of like background. I'm curious what kind of research Amanda M. Lee did so that she could give us like a more authentic Romani character. Also, longtime viewers know that I'm really into a circus style story, so if you can get like that traveling carnival circus kind of vibe, like the cotton candy, the popcorn, decor and upbeat kind of music, stereotypical fortune teller in the little hut with the crystal ball, and like the old janky roller coasters and like the tilt-a-whirl and all the fun kind of games. Like if you can capture that atmosphere and either make it like really fun and like wild and magical, or like a little darker and creepier and grim, then I think you have something really special and something that I want to read more about. I'm not getting that from the cover at all, and I'm not really getting it from the summary, because instead of like focusing on the traveling aspect and them like going from place to place and just running into certain things and facing it, they've become like a circus by day and a force for good fighting evil by night. And I'm just not into that. Like, I'm more into people traveling around, living their lives. They do have like this extra ability, and because they're traveling, sometimes they come into contact with supernatural forces, and maybe they have an opportunity to help and do, or maybe people come to them and ask them for help, and for a certain fee they go ahead and help them. I like something that is less inherently goody two-shoes and like a little bit more ambiguous and gray. I think this story is going to end up being really self-righteous and like young and childish based off of this summary. I don't know, it's a great concept to set up a series in, but I don't like some of the characterizations happening here. Although it is ranking itself number 109 in magical realism, and I'm a pretty big fan of magical realism. It has 4.5 stars and almost 1,000 ratings. It's only 294 pages, and it was published in 2016. So I think maybe I'll hold on to this one as a maybe. Next is going to be Fae Warrior Ruthless Boys of the Zodiac, Book 5. This is another one by Peckhan and Susan Valenti, and if we jump back to Book 1, it's Broken Fae. Okay, so at least they have the Zodiac Academy, and they're also doing some kind of Ruthless Boys of the Zodiac book, so like I give them a little bit of a pass. I kind of know what Peckhan and Susan Valenti are serving. They're a solid writing team. I don't mind it, but I'm not in the mood for it, so I'm gonna go ahead and move on. Finally, we get something not by Peckhan and Susan Valenti called Dark Lies, which is a Magic Side Wolf-bound book number 3 by Veronica Douglas. And jumping back to book number 1, it's called Wolf Marked. So some things category-wise that I think are interesting is they put it in contemporary fantasy fiction, dark fantasy horror, and werewolf and shifter suspense. I'm not super into this. There's nothing that stands out to me about this story. We've got a girl in a small town bar. She doesn't know that magic's real, and then she accidentally runs over a werewolf. I guess what's most interesting about this is our main heroine starts out not a werewolf, which is like an interesting dynamic I'm seeing more often in these shifter stories. It hasn't completely saturated the market yet. The one thing I don't like about the heroine not being a werewolf shifter is usually there's some kind of will they won't they hang up that can't happen because our heroine is human and werewolves only interact with each other. And then there's some kind of like,
oh, you're a secret werewolf all along.
Or like,
our love has turned you into a werewolf.
Kind of like solution at the end when they have this opportunity to be like,
well, love doesn't know any boundaries, and humans and werewolves can have all kinds of relationships.
Sort of defying those expectations. They have that opportunity, and instead of exploring that, they're like,
oh no, we just solved the problem through something arbitrary and random that wasn't set up at all.
It feels like a cop-out. And because I've seen that happen quite a few times now, I'm always really hesitant when the protagonist starts out human. So I think that's enough werewolf fiction for right now. What did you guys think? Did you hear about anything that interested you? Have you read any of these many books from Peckhan and Susan Valenti? Let me know in those comments down below. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, keep reading. Bye!